Hello, everybody. Today I am honored to have Katy Loewen on the show. Don't let her size fool you. In fact, we believe it was Shakespeare that said, though she be but little, she is fierce. Katy is a serial entrepreneur and she loves it. Katy started working at 13 years old at A&W as a car hop. Her boss quickly realized, though, she couldn't quite reach the big trucks with a full tray of burgers and root beers, so she was banished to cleaning the bathrooms. At 15, she started her own t-shirt company called Casey Wildwear. It would appear entrepreneurship is in her blood. Her mother was her greatest teacher, best friend, and business partner. And at 26, her and her mother owned and operated multiple Curves franchises, and that's where Katy really began to shine. She loved the hustle and loved empowering women. Since then, she's held corporate positions, sat on multiple executive boards, been a Rotarian for many years, owned her own leadership coaching company, and now runs Katy Loewen Styling and Design. Her greatest achievement, however, are her two children. They are her everything. When Katy's not slaying dragons, you'll find her on a paddleboard, or maybe riding a cute little bike with her dog Pandy, or maybe sharing some chips, guacamole, and margaritas with her husband of 26 years. She lives life out loud, has an incredible love for people, and her greatest joy is watching others win at life. Welcome, Katy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so kind. Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here today because, as we've just heard, you've made some big shifts in your career direction as a serial entrepreneur. To me, I've sometimes struggled with making a shift or knowing when my discomfort or lack of inspiration is enough to make a change. And I know others struggle with that too. So I'm hoping you can help us all with that, with a bit of insight.
I hope so.
So my first question is, if you look back at your story, what has been the catalyst for making a change in your career direction in the past?
If I look back at my story, and that's a great question because my story is, it's interesting. It's good. Hopefully one day I'm going to write a book. I've started. I've only got a little bit in, but I want to write a book just about the influence that my mom had in my life and how she helped me really grab hold of, I think passion is the big thing. So she really helped me grab hold of that. So all of that to say that I think the catalyst for making shifts is that if things no longer feel right for me, if things are out of alignment, if I'm kept up at night, if I'm no longer, I don't want to say being served, but if it's, without sounding, too airy-fairy, but if my soul is not being nourished, then I know it's time for me to make a shift and move on. And, that's where leadership really comes in for me. So I have to really, really admire the leadership team or the people that I'm working with, the people that I'm working for, the people that I'm ultimately serving as well. I need to have a very deep admiration and respect. And if I don't, or if that has somehow been altered or shifted, then what's the point? So I'm an all-in kind of person, and sometimes that's really worked out well for me. Sometimes maybe not so much, Laura. You know what I mean? But
yes.
I think at the end of the day, it's passion and if things are in alignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love what you said about leadership. And sometimes I think it boils down to values and whether you're sharing the same values in terms of what's driving direction. And if those values are not in alignment with your own, it can cause such a disturbance, I find.
Yeah, 100%. Like that's everything, 100%. And I think we all have values, whether or not we choose to recognize them or even don't even realize that we have a set of values. We do. And so it's really, when I was in my coaching business, one of the big things I would do is talk about values so much, because that is the foundation for how we live our lives. Mm-hmm. And so if we're talking about our work life, essentially we are working with people more than we are with our own family. So you're with your work family. Often you spend more time with them than you actually would with your husband or your spouse or your partner or your kids or whoever, your friends. So it's got to be in alignment. Like for me, it has to be in sync. That's really, really crucial for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a metaphor for, trying to chip away at that brick wall. So how do we know that we're chipping away and making progress, or when we're simply just banging our head against that wall? What's the difference between, keep trying, keep going in our current path, or no, it's time to make a change. Stop banging your head.
Oh, Laura, like you so know I get this, right? And I have spent many years over the course of my career banging my head, because depending on how you were raised and who you are, you can't quit. Even if you hate it, even if you can't quit. We're not quitters. We're not from a family of quitters, right? So for me, that's a lot of banging head on the wall. If you're ashamed to quit something because you're from a family of non-quitters, when really if you hate it and you're just so out of alignment, I mean, why wouldn't you just lay down your sword, take off your armor and move on? So I think one of the biggest things that I've had to come to terms with as am I banging my head against the wall, or am I actually growing? And that minute when I start to feel uncomfortable, I know that I'm okay. I'm growing. I am moving out of my comfort zone, which I know is required in order for me to see growth, either in my industry, in my own self, in my personal development, whatever it is. But the minute I start to feel uncomfortable and almost a little bit scared, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm where I should be. I know that I'm banging my head against the wall when I am trying to change someone's values, when I'm trying to have someone completely shift their values and who they are, and I'm hurting and I'm up at night and things are just not well. Things are just not well within yourself. Things just don't feel right. They feel disconnected, disjointed. You have a little bit of a small ache or a little like something's just nagging at you. That's when I know I'm banging my head against the wall. And then I know it's time to just lay down the sword, take off my armor, time to move on. Next, right? Moving on to something completely different where I can help others shine and I can shine. It's kind of a long answer, but I think that was such a great question. It's so, so important to who we are and how we show up and how we serve the world.
Yeah. And I think too, asking yourself the question of, have I done everything I can to make this what I need to get out of it? And if the answer is yes, then, and it's still not shifting or moving for you, maybe that's when you lay down that sword.
And I think that's really important. I think that's a really, really important to ask yourself is, have I done everything? And then you have to try and differentiate between ego and really, really, have I done everything? Because sometimes our ego tends to take over in situations like that. And that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? That's a whole nother game. And then, that ego can tie back to what I talked about a few minutes ago, is if you're from a family where you don't quit, or depending on how you're raised, or, your ego can really come into play. And it is okay. It is okay to lay down your sword and move on.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. Don't you agree with that though? I mean, move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? I think that discomfort is a catalyst for change. And I mean, like you said, discomfort is a sign of growth, but when it becomes a perpetual thing that is no longer serving you, like you said, I think that's a sign to make you move. It's something nudging you in a different direction.
Yeah, and I think, you'll intuitively know the difference between discomfort where you're moving out of your comfort zone and stress and uncomfortable stress and anxiety and unrest. And I mean, your body will just know the difference, and you'll just know, because it'll just feel so completely different. Because when you're moving out of your comfort zone into in the direction of growth, I mean, it is uncomfortable, but it's also a little bit exhilarating. Like there's a little titch of exhilaration in there, right? Mm-hmm. And hopefully, we can distinguish the two. So
yeah. I think exactly like you said, when it's not serving us well, it'll manifest in our body, whether it's through anxiety or stress or weight gain or whatever yes. that could be.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's usually your first sign.
Yes. Weight gain. Yes. Oh. Laura, I know it.
Oh. So, okay, let's say we have figured out that we're no longer in the situation that's serving us. So we want to make that shift. So we want to make a change in either career direction or business focus, like you've done so many times. What's the strategy? What's our first step, and what do we need to do to kind of shift into that change?
Well, I mean, the first step is so different for so many people. So for me, it's all about, I can figure out real quickly what brings me joy. So what brings me joy currently, well, and for most of my life, it's been designing and styling. So, I mean, if I even think back, and Laura, we've worked together in the past, but if I even think back to when I was little, like I'm talking 8 years old, I would restyle my girlfriend's bedrooms in exchange for Avon lip gloss. Like, I don't know, those of us that are old school out there, Avon had the coolest lip glosses. They were in the shape of hamburgers and eggs and Oreo cookies and big lips, like big red lips. And I would do that at 8, 9, 10 years old. And so it was always in my blood. And when I think about my mom and I think back to the home that we lived in, or the homes that we lived in, she could make a home look incredible and welcoming and so hip and so amazing with nothing. She'd go out into the forest, and she could do anything with anything. I spoke at her funeral and I said she could make a sculpture out of toilet rolls. She was just incredible. But I think I needed to discover my joy, so that, I mean, I've worked really, really hard my whole life. And I'm like, well, I need to do what brings me joy. But I also have to be smart about it. So when people are wanting to make a shift or moving towards making a shift, it's really important to think about your plan B while you're still working your plan A, so that ultimately plan A or plan B becomes plan A. Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, many of us just don't have the luxury to say, oh, this doesn't serve me anymore, I'm quitting, I'm putting in my notice tomorrow. Well, if you have that luxury, I guess you can do that. But that's not really how I wanted to roll. So I was always thinking, doing my research, meditating on it, reading incredible, empowering books, really tapping into my strengths, talking to people, inquiring, just doing the research that's required for me to comfortably make that shift into something that did serve me, something that did bring me joy, and something that ultimately was incredibly rewarding.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that's what we all yearn for, is doing work that brings us joy.
Yeah, doing work that brings us joy. And that is sort of it is a tricky question that you ask, because my husband and I, Rob and I, we have 2 adult children, and we're all like, oh, we want to, let's do things that make us happy. Let's do whatever you want to do, but just make sure you're happy. And the reality is that sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do in order to go where we want to go. Mm-hmm. And that we do. And so it even goes back to to the A&W car hop shop that I had when I got banished to cleaning the toilets because I was too short to reach the car hop tray. I mean, I literally, that's what happened to me. I had to go, I'm 13 years old and I had to go clean all the toilets. So I had to do what I had to do to get where I wanted to go. And I was okay with that. So sometimes we have to do things. It doesn't mean forever. It doesn't mean that, you know, we're compromising ourselves and our integrity and our values and who we are. Sometimes we just have to just muddle through to help us get to where we want to go.
Mm-hmm. And
what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably those things that we dislike doing that it is teaching us something that we're going to need later.
100%.
So while we hate it and it sucks during that time, it's something that will likely manifest later as something that you needed to have as foundation.
Absolutely. And it's really in those uncomfortable moments that, I don't know, they just really propel us. They really do. In yoga class this morning, I go to this great studio in Kamloops. And our instructor said this morning, we were doing, I think we were doing half this series or something today. And she said, she shared with us her experience of becoming a yoga instructor in Thailand. And it was 30 days of intense yoga, you know, up at the crack of dawn and yoga all day and holding poses and sweating. And she said it was horrible. It was the most horrible experience ever. And also the most beautiful experience. So, you know, and it's funny. I mean, that's what she said this morning. She said it was awful. It was so awful. She said, but I loved every minute of it. So that's kind of what I mean by that, you know?
Absolutely. And it's funny, I was just watching, it was a podcast or something with Tony Robbins in it. And he was saying that he was, I think, got together with Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. And he said, do you know what we talked about the whole time? The good old days when we were struggling and working so hard to hustle and all of the fond memories they had before they kind of hit it big. So, yeah, that's
good. And, you know, you just reminded me of something. I think, you know, sometimes we get confused because there's a lot of white noise out there, right? There's a lot of thought leaders, a lot of conflicting ideas. There's a lot of white noise. And so we sometimes, hustle was a great word. 5 years ago, hustle was a great word. Now hustle isn't such a great word for some reason. But I think people get confused, and you'll appreciate this because Miss Brené Brown teaches us this, but hustling is great. There's nothing wrong with working hard and hustling. But when you have to hustle for your worth, that's where it's completely different. And so that goes back to, you know, your original question is when you are hustling for your worth, when you are trying to prove to people that you really are good enough or you really are worthy to hold this position, hold this job, whatever it is, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
We don't need to hustle for our worth. We are already enough.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that almost gives me goosebumps. Like Brené gives me goosebumps. So.
Yes, you and I both.
Yeah.
Okay, so in order to embrace something new, we often have to let something go. Do you have any advice for people who are considering a change of direction, whether it's in their career or their business focus, in terms of what that looks like in the letting go?
Yes, this is something that I work on every single day, honestly. Ego. Ego. You got to let go of your ego. I just had this conversation yesterday with someone, and I was annoyed because I was not receiving recognition for a design. So it was plastered all over Instagram, and I didn't receive the recognition, and I was like, I had to literally have a conversation with myself, and I was like, honestly, are we still there? Like, are you still doing that? That's like your 30-year-old self, where you need to be recognized, and I need to be honored, and I need to have titles, and I need to. No. So I mean, I talked myself out of that real quick. But let go of thinking that you need a fancy title. Let it go. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, in fact, it consumes you. It will eat you up. And you know what? Nobody cares.
Mm.
Nobody cares. So letting go, I mean, no one ever really lets go of their ego, but they can keep it in check, right? So we can learn to manage it a little bit better. But letting go of feeling like I need to continuously be validated or recognized, and letting go of titles. I
Mm.
don't care anymore. I remember at my last corporate job with the then new CEO, we talked about my title. I am not kidding. We were trying to come up with, with the position for me. It was, I mean, it was so toxic at that point. I was so in it. I didn't even know how toxic it was because you're swimming in it. You
Mm.
know, you're breathing it, you're drinking it. You don't even know how toxic it is until something snaps you out of it or whatever it is. But he and I danced around for probably 3 months to come up with my title. And I look back at it now and I'm like, are you kidding me? What on earth? And then it just got to a place where, I had to do a lot of self-work and
Mm-hmm.
really check myself and dive back in and read some more books and put the work in. And
Mm-hmm.
then finally I came to a place and I said, I really don't care. You can call me, you can just call me Katy Loewen. You could put Get Her Done under the title. You could put Worker Bee. You could put, I don't care what you, and that was very empowering for me to do that, to say, I do not care. I'm letting go of that.
So what gets replaced by that need for validation? Is it the knowing that you're enough and you don't need external validation?
I think so, Laura. It's the knowing. It's the I don't know, and maybe that comes with age too. I'm not sure, but it's the knowing. It's the knowing that it it's really all that matters. You know what matters? What Rob thinks, what Mikey thinks, what Dacre thinks. That's what matters. What my people think. That's what matters. And all of the other stuff will happen. It will all fall into place. I care about what my friends think. I mean, but I don't let it consume me anymore because it is the knowing. You just know.
Mm-hmm.
You get that, right? You're there. You're so there, right?
I still struggle a little bit with that. I'm still on my journey for sure
Yeah.
of making sure that it's not the validation that's driving the reason for me doing something. Yeah, I still dance with that one a little bit.
Yeah, because if it is the validation that's driving us, then it's our ego, right? Then it's our ego that's driving the car. Then it's our ego and then that's not really living into our authenticity then, right? So
yeah.
I mean, of course I struggle with it. I just told you I didn't get validation on a job on Instagram, and I was like, but the point is that I got out of it real quick. I was like, I snapped out of that one real quick, right? So I was like,
sure.
Yeah, I did it.
You can't prevent the little tweak of feeling the feels. It's then the how quick you get to curiosity and grounding yourself again that matters. Right?
That's right.
Because we're going to feel that all the time, but it's a matter of shifting into curiosity and then grounding again in the heart of what's important.
That's right. That's right.
Good.
I love it. Yeah.
Nice. So what I'm hearing is that your latest shift, getting into your style and design, has been going well. And final words of inspiration would you give people who are still staying curious or maybe in that place of discomfort where it's a stress versus a healthy growth discomfort?
Well, my biggest one is always having someone on your team. So having someone that you can share your fear with and they can help carry you through. That's a real big one for me, is that I need to talk things out. I'm a talker, so I just got to talk it out. And when I decided to make the shift and leave my coaching business and launch this little tiny baby design business, I thought, who do I think I am? Like, what am I doing? People are going to think I'm a flake. Like, first I was this, and then I was this, and then I was this, and then I thought, I always go back to this. Honestly, Laura, I always go back to this. I think about my mom. I think about all of the things that she did in her life and how admirable it was and how much of a leader and inspiration she was. And I'm like, what the heck? What am I worried about? I'm following exactly in her footsteps. I'm doing it. I am doing what she did. I am a part of her. I'm doing it. So got rid of that. That was fine. So I let go of that imposter syndrome. I think, there's lots of talk about that. I let go of that. That's okay. Then I did launch my little, I call it my little design business, because it really is. It's just me and Pandy. I mean, if you follow my posts, you'll see that Pandy's my little assistant, worst assistant ever, because he sucks at returning emails. But so it's just me and Pandy, and I just had to just do it. And okay, I'm going to have 10 followers on Instagram. No, I'm not. I'm going to build it. Okay, now I've got 20. Now I've got 30. Now I've got 40. And I asked people to support me. So I really embraced my vulnerability. And I asked people, I said, I'm really scared. I'm launching this new little business, and I feel a little bit scared that it might not work. So I had people on my team. I had people that I trusted. And at the end of the day, I had to accept the fact that it's okay to be scared. Just do it anyway. So feel the fear, do it anyway. And that's what I do. And the other thing that I should mention, and I don't know how this will be received, but I really shifted my intention for what I wanted this business to look like. Money has been a big driver for me in my career, and I'm not ashamed of that, and I don't think anybody should be ashamed of that, but everybody has kind of their drivers, right? So what is it that drives people, propels them, pushes them? And money was a big one for me, because I don't want to work till I'm 70. I want to be able to travel to places like Africa and Guatemala and serve people. I want to be able to have nice things. I want to do all of the things that I want to do. You need money for that. And Rob and I, service is a big part of that for us. And we just can't serve if we don't have the resources or the finances to do that. So for this latest adventure that I've taken, I really shifted that, and I decided that money wasn't a driver. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do because I loved it. And I think that's come back to me. And I think that that's been, I don't know. I think that it's just been, the universe has applauded me for that perhaps, and said, way to go, or whatever, and said, you're good, keep going. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my intention was really just to share my design and share my ideas and share my creativity with people, and really, really help to ignite that creative flair that everybody does have, but sometimes they just need that little light. And that's what I've done, is to help, get other people's creativity going. And I feel really good about that. And it's also feeding my creative self. So yeah.
I think it sounds to me like it's what I hear many others talk about is finding your why, and the why has to be deeper than the surface level things that we sometimes are driven by. So there's a why deeper, and it's for you. Maybe it looked like money, but it was actually so that you could serve. And when you connect with the serving, the desire to serve, it's a much bigger why than the money.
Yeah. And I think you're totally tapped into that, and you're onto that. And I think with this latest chapter of mine is that, I don't walk out of a job going, oh, I just made all of this. I walk out of a job looking at the creation that not just I created, but together, the homeowner and I, or whomever it is, we created something beautiful. and the pride on her face or his face. And I mean, it just, you know, it's truly incredible. And I think COVID really, I mean, COVID is such a horrible thing, and we're all done with it. We're all fed up with it. It's been really tough globally for everyone. But I think COVID had a little bit of a blessing for me, because that's when my business really, really did take off, was during COVID. Because I think people realized that, you know, how we dwell is so important. And people were in their space, and they really had to take stock of what's going on and how do I feel, and gosh, this sucks, look at the paint on the wall, like I don't feel inspired, I don't feel motivated, I don't feel. And so I think it was sort of like a rude awakening for people in terms of how they dwell. I don't know, but
yeah.
And if that's the case, then that's maybe a good thing, right?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely that whole idea of your physical environment reflecting your inner environment too, right? And so when you're stuck in that one space, it becomes much more, if we can't do anything about what's going on inside, we can do something about our physical environment,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
and taking that action then shifts what's going on inside. So
yes.
it's circular, I think.
I agree 100%. And you know what's so funny is that in my last business, in my coaching practice, I mean, you know, we did so much internal work, like so much of the inside stuff, and really, you know, trying to create, well, the foundation was strength, right? Was so really leaning into and living and leading in your zone of strength. And so it was all internal. It was all inside stuff. It was like a hardcore inside job. And now it's like done a whole, you know, shift to creating beautiful exterior spaces. So I feel, you know, I kind of feel like it's all connected.
It is.
I feel pretty stoked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just because right now I've been going through this watching Tony Robbins series, but one of the things that he does is getting people physically moving, because your physical state is so connected to your mental state. And you know, even posture can change how you're feeling and things like that. So we know it's connected. Absolutely.
Yes. Well, Amy Cuddy, I mean, she wrote a book on it.
Yeah.
Presence. I mean,
Yes.
she is dialed in with that stuff. So it's so important. I think Tony does a lot of this, right? He does a lot of the, yeah. He's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Interesting.
I know that Amy Cuddy, I met her. She's just an incredible human being. But she shared a story about a horse. Like this is the craziest story I've ever heard. I'll keep it very, very brief. But basically, it was a depressed horse, and this horse was meant to be a show horse. Like she was the most incredible creature. But for whatever reason, she was depressed, and she would hang her head, and she didn't walk like a proper horse, and she didn't do all of these things. And so her trainer reached out to Amy Cuddy, and together they did this project. And my facts might be off a little bit, but they started mimicking how they wanted this horse to behave. So they would physically move the horse's legs in a way that was very, you know, show horsish, whatever the terminology is, and hold, you know, they would make her head hold up, and they transformed this horse through posture. Wow. I'll find the link and I'll send it to you. It's absolutely incredible. And I used to share the story a lot in my coaching days, but posture is huge. Huge.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Is there any final resource or book or tool that you would recommend for people when they're struggling with this?
Where does a girl begin?
There's so many, I know.
Oh gosh, there's like well, you probably know that I'm so into Glennon Doyle right now. It's unbelievable. Have you read any of her stuff?
I love Untamed. I just finished Untamed.
I've read
It's a game changer.
It is it. It is everything for me. And the fact that her and Brene Brown are friends makes my heart sing. You know, the Gifts of Imperfection will and forever be my favorite book, because you know, leadership is leadership. But at the end of the day, if you're not feeling the inside stuff, if you don't have the inside stuff right, you're and maybe right isn't the right word. That's not what I meant. But if you're not dialed in and connected in and really aware of your inside stuff and what makes you tick, your effectiveness as a leader is going to be short-lived. I really believe that. So The Gifts of Imperfection was a game changer for me. It's a thin little book.
Have it.
Yeah, of course you do. Of course you do.
Where is
It is such a little, oh yeah, look at it. It's like a manual for life.
Tiny, but
Tiny,
powerful.
in the afternoon, and then you can read it again the next afternoon. I mean, it is the most incredible book. So also Liz Gilbert, her book, Big Magic, has been really impactful. I love it. And then I really like to switch it up with some, you know, leadership books are great and self-development books are great, but sometimes you got to switch it up and read a good old memoir. Memoirs are my favorite books to read because they, you know, you can get outside of your own head for a while, get into someone else's head for a while. It's good. So I like to read memoirs. I just finished The Wham, you know, George Michael. It was written by Andrew Ridgeley. It was called George and Me. Chanel Miller, Know My Name, is phenomenal. But I always have a leadership book on my nightstand so that I'm always tapping into it, for sure.
Nice.
And then find your people. Find someone who challenges you, inspires you, enlightens you. Find someone, just seek people out that you admire and respect, and ask questions and glean all of the goodness you can from them.
Nice. That's exactly what I'm doing right now.
Well, ditto, right back at you, of course.
Yes. Well, that's a great place to end, I think, Katy. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your wisdom with us. And I'm sure many people will be inspired by your story and your journey.
I hope so. I'm so grateful and honored that you asked me to join your interview today. I feel really blessed. So